Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Most Excellent Adventure to
Heavy Metal
History.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the Heavy Metal History Podcast, my guest for this episode is lead guitar player of the band Trivium, Corey Beaulieu. Corey, welcome to the podcast, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. So something I usually like to start with before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I like to know a little bit about your background, your heavy metal history, so to speak. So what were some of the first bands that got you into the genre, that wanted, that you heard that you were like, okay, this is the kind of music that I want to play?
I kind of, I didn't really, obviously the kind of the typical background usually is, you kind of like start off with, the first music you hear is usually like, what your parents or if you have an older sibling, what they kind of listen to. And that was kind of like my first kind of musical stuff, was just kind of just hearing what, everyone else listened to. And then, but I didn't really like get super into music at a young age until, I'm trying to think what year it would have been. I was probably like maybe like 10 or 11 or something, maybe 12 or whatever. But, the first time I heard anything musically that really struck me was when I heard Guns N' Roses.
Oh,
and
nice.
My parents had, it was probably around the time it came out, because it was like obviously like a huge record. And I think my parents bought it based off of like a friend of my mom's or something that recommended like, you should get this record. But I don't remember my parents really listening to it or anything like that. I just kind of saw it in the CD rack and just kind of looking at it, just kind of looked cool, and looking at the song titles. And also I remember, obviously at this around the same time, Terminator 2 was a big movie, and I remember hearing the song in the movie, and kind of made the connection that I was like, oh, we have the CD. And I remember just listening to a bunch of the songs on the record, and it really struck me. So for a while there, like the only band I knew was Guns N' Roses. Those like I bought all the GNR CDs, and those were the only records I had, and the only band I really knew. And then just kind of gradually like was able to kind of break off from there. And, obviously like kind of just reading about connections, hearing about like Guns N' Roses touring with Metallica. And I'm like, who's they? Who are they? And then, talking to some other people at school, and, borrowing CDs from people, I kind of gradually kind of kept growing. But GNR got me into the music. And then once I heard Metallica was when it really kind of blossomed the idea of being interested in playing guitar. And that was kind of like the first two bands that really kind of got me into music, and then also wanting to play music. And then once I started playing guitar, it just kind of like, it was just like always trying to find new bands and just kind of spawning and, kind of branching off into different genres of metal and everything like that. So it like, it kind of, once I got like kind of down the rabbit hole, it really, I really went into a lot of, trying to find a lot of different bands. And there's always, along the way, there was always like those key bands that really kind of like were my musical, kind of really, big moments where it really kind of like, introduced me to, style of guitar playing or something that really helped me develop my skills along the way. So, there's a whole bunch of stuff.
So, which Metallica is your favorite, and maybe the first one you heard? Because this is like a constant theme that comes up on here. A lot of people always cite Metallica as kind of like their first big kind of heavy metal record they remember. So I kind of mentally keep track of who says what. So I love hearing everybody's answers.
I remember just from, I think it was just like from other friends or people that had, because I had a dude across the street. He never really listened to metal, but I think his sister had like some stuff. And I remember I borrowed, I think the first Metallica record that I got to listen to in full, I think I borrowed Master of Puppets from a friend.
Oh, nice.
And then I think a dude that lived across the street from me, I think after that, once I got into Metallica, after that, there was a dude across the street from me that had a Injustice for All cassette tape. And then I remember also just to be able to hear more Metallica songs, I borrowed Cliff 'Em All VHS from another friend that had something. So it was definitely like, obviously like a lot of the, I think I heard, the Black Album like last out of all those records. Cause I remember after getting into Metallica, like the first Metallica record after being a fan of the band, the first record that came out after being a fan was Load. So
oh, wow.
I was definitely introduced to all the, like the first 4 records were like kind of like the ones that I got into the earliest.
Yeah, that's pretty lucky because I feel like me and you were kind of around the same age. So I think like Black Album and Load were like the 2 biggest Metallica albums at that time. And they were like put into the forefront versus the first 4 records. And it wasn't until like after you kind of saw those that you went back and found the earlier stuff, at least in my case, unfortunately. I had the reverse go of it. I got the Black Album first and then went back to everything else.
Yeah, I think it was, a lot of the early stuff, like when I would look into bands and I'd hear like what, a lot of the band's classic records were, or like big influential records and stuff like that were usually the ones that like, luckily enough, like were the first ones, like I remember the first Megadeth CD I ever bought was Rust in Peace. So,
oh yeah, fuck yeah.
So a lot of those, records, the first records I would always research and be like, what was like, cause I picked up like, Slayer, like Divine Intervention at a pawn shop. And I was like, oh, this band's really fucking cool. And I read in like magazines of like what were like the top records and stuff. And then, so like the first Slayer record that I ever purchased was, besides Divine Intervention, after that was like Rain and Blood. So, I was very slick about, picking up like the band's like classic biggest records, to be like the first ones to be, I think that's why like a lot of those bands are such big influences and stuff, because like I got to hear the glory of like those bands at their peak, like for the first like introduction to those bands pretty much. So
yeah, that's a good way to kind of like, I assume that helped kind of shape and form your guitar playing style, like getting into those bands when you did. When did you first pick up the guitar and want to start learning, and how did that kind of go into wanting to play heavy metal?
Well, it's like metal was like the first music that I heard that really struck me. So, and then watching, especially because I had like, being a big fan of, Guns N' Roses, I also had like the Guns N' Roses Live in Tokyo VHS tapes that I'd watched like religiously, and then watching like Cliff 'Em All and just seeing the energy and, just hearing the riffs and stuff. It was just kind of like, I just really want to play guitar. And then, I did a bunch of mowing lawns and trying to raise money, and then, got my first guitar and immediately started taking lessons. And then once I started taking lessons and, learning the guitar and just kind of like the excitement of it. And, I remember my first lesson, I learned how to play like my first Metallica riff, and I was just like, holy shit, this is awesome. And, playing it over and over again. And then just kind of like, it just snowballs where you just want to learn more and learn more riffs and stuff. And I would just sit in my room, before and after school, just like playing along and trying to learn songs. And then I play along to the CDs, like I was in the band and shit. Like, it was just like, just kind of kept going from there. And it was like the more new bands or new styles of metal that I discover would just kind of like be like, oh my God, there's more. And you just kind of keep wanting to learn. And so I started learning, I got my guitar when I was about 14, and then just kind of, it went from, being really, really like a sports, guy. And then it was like, once I started getting a guitar, it was like, I still played sports, but it was just kind of like my main focus was, it was like, do you practice, playing hockey, or you practice playing guitar? And I'd be like, I'd be playing guitar in my room instead. So
a lot less painful, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, so let's jump ahead a little bit here. You joined the band in between Ember and Ascendancy, is that correct?
Yeah, I joined the band right after they finished recording Ember. It hadn't come out yet.
Okay.
Yeah, my first copy of Ember to Inferno was a homemade CDR that Matt made me with just handwriting on it, because the CD hadn't even been printed yet.
Damn.
So it was just right after that. So I was in the band during the whole, well, we didn't really tour too much, but like all the stuff we did to, shows and to promote Ember to Inferno, I was in the band. But we quickly, it went from Ember to Ascendancy era pretty quick, because even before we even recorded Ascendancy, we were not even really playing Ember to Inferno songs in concert. We were just playing like the demo versions of Ascendancy stuff. So I guess those kind of overlap a little bit in a way, because it wasn't really like an album cycle for Ember to Inferno, because we just kind of quickly, once we got signed to Roadrunner and they started putting us on tour to kind of give us some, I guess, show experience and kind of like have a little touring under our belt, to kind of get us our feet wet. We kind of were just right after signing to Roadrunner. It was kind of, we were already in Ascendancy, I guess, mindset of like kind of getting the songs ready to go. So when we did our first couple tours, we were just kind of live testing, kind of like whatever songs from Ascendancy that we had, written, or whatever versions of those songs we had ready, we would play them on tour. And, there's some funny stories of just like, playing like the early versions of like Pull Harder, and like, we were on tour with Machine Head, and their crew guys would hear us play like our, early versions and be like, well, that song's really cool, but the chorus sucked. So we would by the time we went to record Ascendancy, we had rewritten the chorus to something different. It was kind of like, just the old school way bands used to do was like, they would live test songs and see how they worked, and then kind of like, kind of update and fix them as you went along. But it's not as easy to do that nowadays, since everyone films everything. You don't want to play something that's kind of like in work mode, and then it's stuck on the internet forever. So we kind of were like predated the everything going on YouTube era.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I've actually never heard that from anybody really that I've talked to so far, that they that is like a weird time to be able to have that opportunity to be able to demo songs like in a live setting, to see how people respond to it, because I can't imagine, exactly like you said, any band wanting to do that today. It would just be impossible.
Yeah, because we did our first, because before we did the Road Rage tour, our touring was basically like, we'd go out for like 2 weeks with a band, or jump on some dates, and it was kind of short, quick touring. And then the tour we did with Machine Head, it was Trivium, Machine Head, and Chimera. Mm-hmm. Was our first full U.S. tour all around the country. And then right after that tour was when we were going in the studio to start recording Ascendancy. So it was like, we had this like 4, 5, 6, I can't remember how long it was, but like a full U.S. tour. And then right after that, we were going into the studio. So we used the tour as our like pre-production practice mode. So we had in a notebook like three rotating set lists of all the songs from Ascendancy.
Damn.
And then each show, like, all right, we're going to do set list A, and then next show is set list B. So it's like we had a rotating set of like a combo of, 'cause I think we recorded like 14 songs or something like that, someone in that ballpark. So each show had like, we were playing probably like a 30-minute set. So we probably had like 5 songs in each set. So it just like kind of rotate. So throughout the tour, we like had, enough reps on each song before we went in the studio and stuff. So it'd be interesting if anyone got any footage, because some of those versions of those songs are quite a bit. They had like different parts, or the vibe of the parts were different. And then when we went to the studio, there was some stuff that got rewritten. So the skeletons and the main ideas of those songs were there, but there was some subtle changes from the last time we performed them live to the studio. So it was I could actually remember a good chunk of them. And I think there's actually, probably our manager has them, but there's some old, probably like pre-production recordings of the alternate reality versions of some of those songs.
So how did you and Matt kind of write everything back then? Because I'm sure it's changed a lot nowadays because of technology and everything. Because what was that? I assume you guys would have been writing this around 2004-ish, maybe early 2000 or late 2003.
Yeah, like the first 3 songs that we wrote were the kind of like probably started like August 2003, August, September, because I remember the first song we ever, after I joined the band, the first original song that started to come together was Blinding Tears Will Break the Skies. And then after that, when we did our first little mini tour over in Europe, I remember the Origins of the Deceived was written in like a hotel room in like Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
And then after we got back, the first song that I actually like wrote riffs for was Like to the Flies. Okay. And basically like a lot of the songs from Ascendancy, besides a couple, like Pull Harder, Rain, Flies, not Gunshot was written on tour, but the first couple songs, like there's a handful of them, especially Rain, Flies, Pull Harder, were just written from warm-up jams, before we would start jamming whatever, the back hat or the songs that we already had. We were just like, hey, just start playing a riff and like this jam on it. And I started playing the intro riff to Flies as like a warm-up thing. And we just kind of like went kind of that song was, kind of back and forth. Like I wrote like the intro riff, and then Matt kind of like on the spot came up with like the pre-chorus riff. And then we went home and I wrote the pre-chorus riff in my apartment. And then we came back the next day and I was like, hey, I got this riff. And then, we just kind of pieced the song together. Just kind of a lot of the stuff came from just like someone playing a riff to like just jam on to warm up. And then we're like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. Let's like actually like start, building a song off of it. So there was a lot of that stuff. Like I remember the intro to Rain, I just kind of started playing out on the spot. And then, Matt came up with a couple other riffs. And then there's like a riff in that song that I wrote like when I was in high school that I was just like, oh, this will work. Pull Harder was just, Travis started kind of playing what was the kind of like, I guess like the origins of the drum intro. It was probably, I think it was a little bit different. It kind of developed over time, but he just started playing like some like drum lick. And then Matt had the riff that comes in. He kind of like wrote that at home and was like, oh, this will work over this drum part. So a lot of that stuff just kind of that old school, just kind of jamming in a room together, which is what we still basically like is part of our process, because, everyone, even after that, I was just like, everyone always is like writing ideas at home or putting song demos together. But, we won't go into the studio to start working on the record unless we have to go into a jam spot and work this stuff out as a group. And there's a lot of cool stuff that happens in that process, and a lot of writing on the spot as a team. And also just like, it's always cool to hear, like if I bring in a song, someone else in the band might have a that's not connected to the song or hasn't heard it a million times might hear a totally different kind of idea of where to take it or do something different. So it's always fun during that process to kind of see what the jam time does and takes the song. So that was kind of like, it's like that's how you kind of did it back then, or even before that. Like, bands would just like, to work on new material, you just get in a room and jam it. It's like, you kind of lose a lot of that creative kind of energy if you just do everything solely over just MP3s and just doing everything on the computer. There's like, we've done that on certain records, and we're just like never doing that again, because if you don't go in there and jam the stuff, you kind of are. It's a crucial step in the creative process that if we don't do that, the material suffers.
Yeah. That's what I was really curious about, because how much stuff has changed as far as like how a lot of bands write. It's really refreshing to hear that you guys still like that's how you have to work together, and it's what works best for you guys, and that's how you get the best song out of it, is to be in that room and work on stuff together, as opposed to sending tabs or an MP3 and like piecing it together through math somewhat, so to speak, if you just do it by tabs. But that's cool you guys still do that.
Yeah, being able to have all the technology and stuff, it's like, it's great for writing ideas because, I have all the, Superior Drummer, like all the fucking software you could possibly want. And it's great for writing because it's like, you can get inspiration by just throwing up, like, instead of playing to like a click, having like a real, like good sounding, like, drum beat to play to, it definitely helps you write ideas and stuff. And then you can put a demo together, but we kind of use that as just like, hey, here's all the basic idea, and then like, let's see what we can do with it. And a lot of the times there's a lot of rearrangements, playing a riff and be like, this doesn't feel right. Let's rewrite a part. And, the songs definitely go to a different place. Cause it's like a lot of stuff. It's like, I wouldn't have thought of that on my own. It's like, I needed the other guys in the band to, throw out some ideas of what they're hearing. And also having a drummer like Alex, like, there's shit he does that there's no way I could program on a computer, so it's like, real, though. It's like, it's a great tool to come up with ideas, but like, for humans, playing together and feeling out a song to make it feel natural and good, definitely, gives the songs energy and it's definitely, I think what people have been so excited about our last, couple records is because you can kind of feel that energy of like, a band in a room kind of just playing together, very lively. And it's definitely something that we've learned to, never leave out of the process of making a record. And it's great because like, we can, the last two albums, basically, like we put those songs, like it's like one song a day. We just come in with like the basic ideas and riffs, and then by the end of 3 or 4 hours of jamming, we have a live demo recorded of the idea of the song. So it's like we're able to get a lot more work done in a more timely, using our time efficiently. We can get song demos, put together faster than one person trying to do everything themselves at home, on a computer, having to play all the parts themselves. It's like, well, I got a bass player. Why do I have to play bass? It's like, and I don't have to do multiple guitar tracks because there's multiple guitar players in the band. So it's like everyone just kind of can get their ideas in and do their thing. And it's a very organic, awesome process that we've all learned to, some people can be, in other bands or whatever, songwriters can be very guarded against, people wanting to change their ideas. But everyone in the band has come, has over the years grown to welcome, other people's ideas because, the song could take a really creative, cool twist based off of someone kind of hearing a part differently or feeling a section out where we were like, I don't know if this is the best way to go. And they're like, well, let's experiment. Let's try it. Like, what are you hearing? What other possible ways could this part be than what is on the demo, and then we kind of feel out, either letting the vocals take the lead or, changing a part to, open something up for another part. So we always been, when people ask us advice, like younger musicians starting off bands and stuff, we've always preached, get together with other musicians and play in a room together. And, so many people nowadays are wanting to be, YouTube or Instagram stars on instruments and posting videos and stuff. But it's like, if you really want to be a band, yeah. It's like, you need other players. You need to get in a room and feel out that creative process of what your band's going to be. And you can learn so much from playing with other people and other musicians and getting that experience of like performing live, and that, that whole experience is a very, rich educational experience for, being creative and mm-hmm. working with other people and stuff like that. So it's a very important process that, I think is slowly kind of, a lot of people don't really go up with that, as like the way you did it, because, back then it was like the only way you could like jam with people was actually being in a room together. And nowadays, with everything going on, it's like fucking Zoom city, everyone doing Zoom jams now and stuff.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, I think also, minus like drummer changes, you guys have the advantage of, being together for over 15 years now. So I'm sure like your work ethic with each other, you just know how to kind of work together as a group now. And it's kind of just like, what's the word I'm looking for? My mind is like always coming up with like a million thoughts, and I have one thing and then it just goes somewhere else. I guess kind of the way you guys like, how somebody's gonna work when you're ready to write a song. So there's not like a lot of second guessing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we've just worked together so long that, there'll be, there's like parts in songs where just like, we'll be like working on something and they might have like a basic like chord progression. And then that might be like, we need like a Corey style riff to go underneath this. And there's like each person in the band, like kind of has like between the three of us, like we're always just like, oh, that's a total Paulo riff, or that's a Matt mm-hmm. riff. And like people just have like a certain style of kind of riff, kind of like there's like certain things where it's like very distinctive, like, oh, that's definitely like a, Apollo style riff. And, we kind of know that, and kind of know like the style of songs, kind of like how people kind of naturally write, like what's their kind of like their niche. Mm-hmm. But it's also cool that like I can bring in a song idea, or, Matt can bring in a song idea, and then whoever's the other two guys, like either me or Paulo, or Paulo and Matt, whoever's the other guys, like we'll throw in like parts that are kind of their vibe. And it's like when we kind of all mesh our styles together, kind of that's what makes the Trivium sound, is like the combination of everyone's kind of styles coming together. And we've also like, there's a lot of stuff like on the last, like, especially the last two records, where we might be like, we needed a different riff for this part. And then we all start jamming or playing our instrument, and like someone will be like, oh, I like where you're going with that. And then maybe I'll come up with like a little section or an idea, and then Matt will chime in, and we have like these things that we call hive mind riffs, where like all three of us kind of like put together or bring a little kind of part of the riff into the picture. And then, all three of us have like sections of the riff that we brought into it. So it's like kind of like these weird like combination riffs where it's like not one person wrote the whole riff. It's like each person like kind of brought like a little ingredient to it to make it like this really kind of like oddball, like, well, wouldn't have thought of that. It's like really kind of interesting how like some parts come together from just like everyone. We'll come up with like a weird part, and then Alex will just come up with some fucking weird ass drum part where you're just like, well, this section just totally, ended up in a place where no one expected, but it's really cool. And it adds like a interesting flavor to the song. So we kind of like those moments, cause it's just like, you just don't know where it's going to end up, and it makes writing fun.
Yeah, that's something I actually wanted to touch on with Ascendancy specifically. There's such a way that the riffs are composed on that record where just the leads and the rhythms that you have on that record match so well. And it's funny because you mentioned earlier how like you would change things after playing them live that maybe didn't fit. So that makes me curious now, like how would that record have sounded if you guys weren't kind of workshopping it, so to speak? Because there's so many parts in that record that just like I couldn't imagine another lead riff with that sick ass rhythm that's going on right now. No song specifically, but it's got such a good balance of those two things, and it's amazing to me how well your guys' styles just kind of fit together, specifically on that record as well.
Well, if we weren't touring, when we were off tour, like Matt was, when we were writing like Ascendancy and stuff, like Matt was still in high school.
Yeah, that still blows my mind when I hear that, man, how young he was.
Yeah, because he was in high school. I was still, when I first joined the band, I was still in school. I was at Full Sail, so I was finishing up school. So we would just rehearse, and then once I graduated, I didn't have a job or anything. So it's like once Matt got out of school, it was like we would just rehearse all afternoon. We didn't have anything to do, so we were just playing every day, writing songs, and that's how a lot of the stuff came, because we were just playing nonstop all the time. So before we started touring, it was like we were kind of like in tour, kind of like playing as much. We were playing more than we were on tour because we had more time to play. Mm-hmm. We weren't time restricted, so we were just playing and playing and playing. And a lot of stuff, like once we got into the studio after we toured, when we really got to sit down, especially with Jason Sukoff, who's an amazing guitar player, songwriter himself.
Oh yeah.
Once we got to get in the studio. Yeah, once we got in the studio and were able to really kind of analyze and dig through the songs, and having Jason's ear as well, and him being like, "Hey, this part could be better. We can take something like Drown and Torn Asunder. Like we have like the middle section where all the solos are going off, and like the way it starts off is kind of basically how like the whole kind of section went for all the solos. And we're like, all right, we have this chord progression that starts it off, but it's like when the solos kick in, we should kind of take it somewhere else. And we kind of developed like taking the chord progression and then adding, like making it more riff oriented in the background and kind of building off the parts. So a lot of stuff like that, where we had like the kind of basic elements there, and it was just like, what can we do to make this more interesting? And then Jason having a fresh ear to the stuff can be like, hey, maybe we should make this part, instead of a thrash part, make it more of a fucking, a heavy breakdown type section instead. And we're like, all right, cool. Let's like add to it and change it. And kind of a lot of stuff that we would do now on our own, mm-hmm. and having like the experience where we can really kind of be like, maybe this part could be different, but we can kind of keep the riff in there the same or something like that. We do a lot of stuff, obviously doing, 9 records and having the experience of working with producers and kind of like how people, analyze songs and like experiment with, parts and stuff like that. We kind of like, we're doing that with Jason, kind of, him having the experience of knowing like, hey, maybe this part's cool, but maybe we could fuck around with it and see if we can come up with something that's more memorable or makes the part better. So we did a lot of that stuff, and kind of taking like these really good songs that had a lot of potential, and then just kind of taking them over the top with just trying different things, trying new ideas. And Jason definitely, his working relationship with us at that time, like, was just kind of, we hit magic in a bottle with him being this upcoming, new producer, and us being a new band, and both wanting to kind of prove our worth and show what we can do. And I think we really kind of captured lightning in a bottle, because, it definitely was like biggest thing Jason did. Definitely launched his career, and the same for us. So it's like we both kind of really kind of launched our careers like with that record. And I think it was really good, because he had something to prove like we did, and really wanted to make this the best thing we possibly could make. So we really were just all kind of like had the eye of the tiger. Like we wanted to fucking just, kick everyone's ass and put a lot of work into it. So, it was definitely a lot of fun, and it's crazy that, especially to have a record, that's still relevant and talked about 15 years after the release is, pretty awesome.
Yeah. That's something how you can tell it's going to stand the test of time for like another 15, 30, 100 years. That's the great thing about something like this, and just music in general. Something I wonder if you could confirm for me. It has to be true, but I was listening to that I guess commentary track that's on Spotify for the 10-year anniversary of this record. Is it true that Sukov is kind of responsible for the guitar tone on the record, like changing it?
I think we re-recorded the guitars twice for the whole record. But I think I remember the actual guitar tone on the record. I think that was Andy Sneap, because when he mixed that record, we got the mix back and we were like, I remember we asked like, what'd you use on the guitar tone? It sounds really fucking good. And it was like a PV 5150, and it was like a Mesa something, like a dual rectifier or something that was mixed together, blended. So I think Andy Sneap, he did a lot of, I think he basically I think he reamped the guitars and bass on that record, in the mix. Yeah, I'm not really sure I can't even remember like what we actually recorded with or tracked on. I remember some of the guitars we used, but I don't remember the amps or anything.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to hear about the guitars you use, because I know you're a big guitar guy, so I would love to hear a little bit about what you used on the record.
I remember recording a lot of the guitar solos with one of Jason's. He had like an Ibanez, kind of like the famous like Steve Vai looking one, where it's like black and like green.
Shit.
Yeah. I used that for a bunch of stuff, and then we actually recorded the rhythm guitars with this homemade like nameless brand guitar that Jason or someone at the studio had. It was like a made from spare parts guitar, and it was like a nameless brand, just homemade guitar that just sounded really good. I don't know if it was Jason's or somebody else that was working for Jason at the time, but it was at the studio and just kind of started playing on it. We're like, this guitar sounds really good with whatever amps we're playing on. And that's what it was recorded with, And then I know Matt probably used his old Gibson Les Paul that he used on a lot of stuff back then. Probably for like solos and stuff, but, yeah, it was like a very, non-sexy gear list, because we didn't really use a whole lot of stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, early days, man. But it's still cool to like kind of hear about like, what was kind of going on in the studio and what was used, even if it was like a one-time thing, it's still, I find it interesting anyways. And I assume that people that listen to this also feel the same way.
Most of the records are, the gear list is pretty minimal, except for I think the outlier was Shogun, where we used try to use every fucking piece of gear on the planet on the record.
Do you remember about how long it took recording wise, as far as like going into the studio and then being done with everything, and like how you guys kind of pieced everything out? It could have been, I think, kind of usual. It was probably like a month. Okay.
Because we did like a week tracking drums at Morris Sound in Tampa, the legendary Morris Sound.
Oh yeah.
We did like a week out there, 5 to 7 days, probably, doing drums out there, and then went back to Sukov's studio out in Sanford and did the rest. And I remember it taking absurdly long. Kind of like the normal, how it usually takes to record a record.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just kind of like the typical kind of mix master thing after that. So it was like, besides like the hiccup where we had to re-record all the rhythm guitars, it was kind of like, just like nothing really stood out as, anything, crazy or anything, kind of like the normal kind of typical album process.
Yeah.
It was.
Besides like re-recording it, what was kind of your guys' initial reaction when you heard that like everything was out of tune and you had to go back and redo it all?
We kind of got a phone call. I think Jason kind of took it harder than anyone else. Cause obviously like him being the producer of the record, the whole kind of thing, it's like, he's kind of like the leader of the ship, I guess, when it comes to like the record with the record label and stuff. And I think he kind of had like a little bit of a breakdown because it was like, it's gonna be all my fault, kind of thing. But I just remember we just kind of came in and we're just like, all right, we got to fucking re-record it. Cause we actually recorded the record a half step lower than it actually was. And everything was out of tune. Or a lot of it was kind of wavering. So it was noticeable. Huh. So then we re-recorded the record in drop D instead of drop D flat, which is what we play in now, surprisingly. So we just tuned up half a step and re-recorded it, and that was it. Like, it was kind of luckily we hadn't done solos or melodies, so we didn't have to re-record all that shit too. So it was just having to record the rhythm guitars.
It's not too bad. It's still a pretty significant setback.
Yeah, well, luckily, everyone's, we feel are pretty good at what we do, that it's not like, crazy, crazy. We don't have to do like a million takes to get a fucking part recorded. So It's like, it's not just the amount of songs kind of can be time consuming, but to actually get through a song is not like that crazy. It's just, you have to do so many of them, at that point, cause we were recording like 14 songs. So, and I think Ascendancy, we quad tracked it. So it's like you had to record everything 4 times. So, that made it a little bit more of a process, but, luckily, we know how to play the riffs, that it's, we're not fucking up all the time. So it's not too bad.
Yeah. Cause I mean, it seems like at that point you guys were so dialed in with what you had ready to go that it was just going to be like in and out, no problem. You got this. And that's a good thing to have, that everybody's on the same page. You guys are ready to go. You have Sukov, who's like the man. What a great group of people to work with for that record.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. And, then hearing it, like having someone like Andy Sneap, who we're all a big fan of the records he had done over the years up to that point. And, the fact that we were able to get him to mix it was awesome. And, hearing it back for the first time, like hearing them, I think the first song we got to hear mixed was like Light to the Flies, and we were just like, whoa, shit. It's like, this record sounds fucking sick. And it just kind of, and then everything, we were just like super stoked that we got to like, it was my first time ever recording a record and going through the process. So it's like everyone was just like super excited and stoked about making the record. And then after it came out, it was just like no one was expecting that. So that was definitely quite the whirlwind of experiences all fucking happening in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think you guys, that record came out at such a crucial point of kind of where music and I guess technology and everything, where it was headed, because people were still buying records at that time. Downloading and digital music wasn't anywhere close to as big as it is now. And it's interesting to see the bands that were just kind of hitting around that time and where they're at now. And I mean, all the bands that put out records around when you guys did, like 2004, 2005, are mostly still together. And I feel like that's a good, I guess, sign that everybody was buying records back then. Is it something that you guys have kind of noticed over the years that, you've adapted to with like people buying less records? Like, how do you kind of take that into account?
Yeah, it was definitely back then. It was like, cause we put out Ascendancy, it was like March.
Yep.
And then that summer we were on Ozfest, and that Ozfest at that point was like, kind of like one of the, getting near the end of it being it was kind of like tastemaker fucking tour, because we fucking exploded on that tour with just like fucking just selling truckloads of CDs a week, even daily, like doing the FYE signings or whatever, Sam Goody or whatever fucking CD chain was doing it. We would just sell fucking so many CDs a day. It was just like going off that it was pretty fucking gnarly. And, we've always been a big advocate, of, we love like Spotify and all that stuff. Like we all use that shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe like on the, the sound scan reports, like you might not have the amount that you used to have, but it's like the amount of consumption that your music is getting is still up there. And, the fact that like we, put out, one of our, most streamed songs have been like songs from like the last 2 or 3 albums. And,
that is true.
And even now, like just going on our Spotify and seeing how many of the songs from the new record are in the top 10. So that shows like people are buzzing, listening to it. And even though it's like, our sales, the first week sales, we have very dedicated fans that like want like all the special bundles and the vinyls and stuff. And, we even with overall sales maybe are lower nowadays, but like, people are still, metal fans love the physical product, so they still buy a lot of it. And even nowadays, like we're doing bigger shows and higher tickets now than we did when our CDs were selling way more, so there's people definitely listening and enjoying the music and wanting to come out to the shows. That's like, we're doing bigger shows now than we did when we sold twice the amount of records. So it's still, it's still, people love music. It's never going to go away. It's just like they're consuming it in different formats that, maybe doesn't show up on, definitely like the more, I always interesting to look at the information on the charts and stuff. And it's like, you look at metal bands and it'd be like, band sold 16,000 records the first week and 15,000 of them are physical product. And then you'll see like some rapper that like number 1 on the charts and sold like 150,000 copies and like 800 of them were actual CDs. It's all like streaming equivalent. Cause they'll stream like fucking one song will stream like 30 million fucking streams in like a week. And it's just like, it all adds up. And, it's just metal is still very, very focused on the physical product, the artwork and getting the vinyl and all that stuff. So, hopefully over the years, like eventually like more and more, the metal rock fans will stream a lot. But it's just great. People want the CD and be able to like listen to the record and like have the booklet and read the lyrics and all that stuff. It's like, kind of how I did it when I was a kid,
Oh yeah.
Just lay on the floor with a CD booklet and try to memorize all the words as you listen to it. But, I love the streaming stuff. When I go out running, I just kind of find something on Spotify and I can just, if I get bored with it or want to listen to something else, I got I got everything at at my disposal to listen to. So it's very convenient for that stuff. And also, just discovering new music and, and also maybe listening to something you wouldn't have normally listened to because you wouldn't have bought the record, but it's like you can listen to something without being like, buyer's remorse and being like, man, I wish I didn't buy this record.
Yeah, that is a nice thing about having digital stuff, man, because I used to be such a compulsive buyer when I was growing up getting CDs that, man, I can't imagine how much stuff I would have just been like, oh man, I wish I didn't buy this. But it's changed.
I also like the fact it's like going from having the iPhones and stuff like that. It's like it's nice that you don't have to buy a CD if you want to put it on your iPod or something. You don't have to fucking sit there and rip all your CDs into your computer. So it's definitely nice. And I think it's just you gotta sometimes you have to just kind of wait for everything to kind of see where it goes. And it's been nice. We've it's definitely helped. We've with the back catalog being streamed and people maybe bought the record, but when they are out and about doing something, buying, going, just listening to it on Spotify because you're not going to carry along your CDs and stuff, it's been nice, especially, nowadays with, with no touring in the foreseeable future. It's like we do make income from, the streaming of the old records. So it's like, it's kind of a good thing to have when you're not making anything from touring and being able to, sell merch on tour and stuff. So it's definitely a good thing to have as a backup, when there's nothing else going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a cool thing too, though. Like you mentioned, you can see like all the plays on Spotify. That's one thing where like it does suck that can't somehow correlate to, even though it's like an antiquated thing now, correlate to record sales for you guys. Whatever you do get off of it, it's definitely, it's cool seeing those numbers, because I mean, you got millions of plays just on like the first few songs on Spotify, and seeing that as compared to like, oh, this record sold 100,000 copies 10, 15 years ago. I know it's more than that, but I'm just example here. It's interesting to kind of like have that proof like right in your face where just anybody can look at it, whereas I think back in those days it was kind of a little bit of a secret somewhat, of like knowing what sound scans were and how many records sold every week or month or whatever. So it's kind of a nice thing in that sense to see it kind of change to where like just anybody can see how many streams they got, and it's cool to know that a band can like have that many millions of listens on something.
Yeah, they finally, like, a little while ago, they changed where streaming does account for record sales. It's just like you have to sell, or you have to stream like good amount of streams to equal one physical CD purchase. But I think it's like 1,500 streams equals one album.
Wow, okay. There's some math in there that I would like to figure out. That's really interesting, because like I was thinking, like, as soon as you mentioned that, I was like, all right, how can I cheat the system to help out bands, where I can just stream something all day? That'd be a good way to do it. But man, 1,500 streams counts as one. That's crazy.
Yeah, so like you could have like, like some rapper could have like one song that goes off on a playlist and could stream like, a shitload, and like just that one song alone like equals a shitload of CDs sold. So it's like, it's definitely people are making some coin on streaming, because some people get some fucking ridiculous amount of streaming.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as long as people are, I just want people to hear it and then come out see us on tour. It's like but it's good. You can definitely see the analytics. I know Metallica did the whole thing where they would play certain songs in their set list because they would see the data on streaming that like, oh, this song is particularly played a lot more in this city than anywhere else. So we should play this song when we hit this city. So it's like kind of using the data to kind of see what's kind of hit, what's, getting people fired up. And, we even on the Sin in the Sentence, like our record label guy was like, hey, I don't know if you guys noticed, but besides the singles on the record, once the record came out, like after a while, they're like, yeah, Beyond Oblivion is getting a crazy amount of streams for a song that's not a single. So people are really liking that song. Is like, we should make a music video and make it a single based off of just people naturally gravitating towards the song. We decided to make a music video and make it a single based off of like fans just being really stoked on the song. So it's cool to see once you put the record out, besides people on social media, it's like just seeing the streaming numbers, like, once the record comes out and you're like, wow, people are streaming this song a lot. We should definitely put this in the set when we go on tour. So it's cool to see, like, you can kind of see what your fans are kind of gravitating towards. And then you can kind of like know, like, oh, I wasn't expecting people to like this song so much, but, we should put it in the set list because, people, I'm assuming, if they listen to it a lot, they're going to want to hear it live. So
yeah,
it's kind of cool to see all that stuff. And, yeah, so it's really cool. And, our manager has, way more access to the, all the analytical stuff that he sometimes send us of just like, what's what's the weekly streams of what songs kind of like being spun a lot and stuff. So there's so much data, involved that you can dive into it if you're like a total numbers kind of geek.
Yeah.
But just having the stuff on the front page of Spotify, just kind of seeing what's in your top 10 at the moment is pretty cool. Like even after the record came out, it's like the song that has the absolute most streams we have is not even in our top 10 anymore because everyone's, sharing and liking, listening to the new stuff so much that our highest streamed song's not even in the top 10 anymore. So it's pretty cool that people are just kind of absorbing the new records so much that it's kind of cool, being around, as we said, for 15 plus years, and people are still gravitating and consuming new music and not just being like, a nostalgia act where it's, oh, new stuff's cool, but I'm going to listen to the 20-year-old album.
Yeah. And I think those people, as much as they want to like bitch about stuff like that, they don't, thing is they don't have to bitch about it. They can just go listen to that album. It's always going to exist. The new stuff isn't going to negate any of the old stuff being less than, it's such a weird thing. I can't wrap my head around it, but that's just me personally. Everybody's different.
Well, it's having such a big back catalog at this point that, at any certain point, if someone like the first time they heard us and got into us was on the Sin of the Sentence or even this new record, you go on Spotify or hear it on a playlist, then they can look and like, oh shit, there's like 8 more albums. I can dive into, I got a whole bunch of new stuff to listen to. And it's been great, picking up new fans along the way and then kind of having that adventurer kind of thing of diving into the back catalog. We've gotten, especially in the UK, we had 2 old records, one went, Shogun went silver and the Crusade finally, passed the gold status mark. And, for records that are like 10 to 13 years old, like the streaming of people kind of discovering the back catalog has pushed those to, hit like, sales, status and stuff. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of bands I've seen that have had old records hit like a sales mark because, people are going back and you're kind of like, people that bought the CD back in the day, but they still want to listen to those things and they're on a new platform with Spotify or Apple Music.
Yeah. That's
like those reoccurring spins. It's like people aren't rebuying the record, but they're still listening to it and you're getting those sales. It's kind of like you bought the record on cassette back in the day and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, CDs are the new thing. And you rebuy all the records that you love that you had. So you get like extra sales from people, consuming the music on a different platform. So it's definitely kind of boosted, I think, a lot of bands' back catalogs of people, even records. Look at Metallica, Black Album's gone fucking, sold like 20 something million records, but then you look at Enter Sandman's like 150 million or something, some crazy number on streaming, which has just boosted that record's sales even more. So it's like kind of like
insane.
It's like crazy how like big stuff that was already big on its own from back in the day is even just skyrocketed stuff from it being consumed on streaming platforms now. So kind of gives that catalog a little boost, which is nice.
So kind of two last little things here I want to touch on so I don't keep you too much longer. As far as Ascendancy goes, it's 15 years old now. Not necessarily comparing it to everything else you guys have done in your catalog, but how do you think it holds up for you personally?
It's definitely one of my, obviously being my first record I've ever made, it's definitely, is up there in the, life importance of something that it's like, that was my first record I ever made. It's a pretty good first record, to be a part of. So it's like, we never expected, we were just excited to, we were just enjoying, kind of like the same mindset we have nowadays is we just kind of write music that's fun and strikes a chord with us, like, playing it on our own in a garage. It's like, even if there was no fans, we had no fans basically for Ascendancy. It's like, just basically it was just Matt, Travis, and I in a shitty fucking hot as fuck, storage room in Florida. We were just writing music that was fun to play, and we liked jamming. And, I think we just kind of kept that mindset that it's like, if we're feeling it and we're enjoying playing it and writing it, that our fans will enjoy it too. Cause that's basically how Ascendancy was, you know, it's like we were just playing music for us that we liked. And then it just struck a chord with like-minded fans. So we just kind of keep that mindset nowadays and just remember those moments of how, I guess, songs that are, for our fans, for Trivium are like our classic songs, kind of like how the origins of them were just very innocent, just jamming riffs in a fucking warehouse. And that's kind of like how we have a nicer warehouse, but it's basically the same setup. It's not hot, luckily. But it's a little bit the same kind of aesthetics, but it's a little bit more comfortable nowadays that we're older. We kind of want a little of that comfort. But it's like to have that is our part of our catalog, and luckily we've made other records along the way that are held up in a regard as that as well. So it's definitely we hold that record highly, because it's definitely been a big part of getting us to where we are today. And along the way, just kind of like the experiences we had, from our first couple tours and kind of experiencing all, the ups and downs of, being in a band and in the music industry. But, it's great to have record plaques on the wall from that record, from it being, coming out, and especially in the UK, it struck such a big chord that it, sold a gazillion copies over there. So it's, it definitely was the career starter. So you can't, you gotta love your record that, has done so much to get to where you are. So, luckily, it's, as I said before, it's awesome to have a record that's still talked about today and has been such an important record, with a lot of people that when they were, in their early teen years discovering music, like how many people have been like, oh, that was like my first metal record, or got me into metal, and hold it to a high regard, because it, kind of like how we talk about hearing, as a kid, Master Puppets, and how you still talk about it nowadays. It's like that record is, has the same effect on that generation of kids that are probably like in their 30s now, where like, yeah, when I was, a teenager, I heard that for the first time, or my older brother played it for me, and it, changed my musical listening habits and got me into metal and stuff. So it's cool to have that record been an influence on people, getting them into metal. And also there's, now that we've been around long enough, there's a lot of people that were young when they heard that record. Other bands have come up to us, at festival or something, or hit us up on Instagram saying how that record was like super influential to them on learning guitar or wanting to play guitar. So it's cool to kind of be around long enough where a lot of the same things, like, the bands I would talk about in the same regard, we're kind of that band to a lot of people. So it's extremely flattering that, little riffs we wrote in a warehouse or on our couch when we're, in our teens, helped inspire other people. So it's pretty crazy. And since it's a 15-year anniversary, we're going to be, I think later this summer or sometime in the year, we're doing a special limited edition, like Ascendancy web store stuff. We're coming up with awesome. Doing some special. We did it for the 10-year anniversary of Shogun, doing a limited run of special anniversary merch, and people fucking bought that stuff like crazy. So we're trying to come up with something special for the Ascendancy 15-year anniversary with some cool merch, and doing some new merch based off of the record. So should be some cool stuff coming up this year to celebrate, since around the time the record came out like 15 years ago in March, but we were doing all the stuff to promote the new record, so we're kind of put that off a little bit. So we can kind of focus on the new record, and then also kind of give Ascendancy its like little moment to kind of celebrate, when there's not a bunch of new album kind of stuff lying around to, distract everybody. So hopefully hopefully we'll hear some more stuff on that soon, so everyone can check it out. But it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, not to be that guy, but I do have to admit that that record definitely helped my guitar playing a lot, for sure, because there were so many songs on it that I wanted to learn how to play, that when I found the tabs for it, that's like all I would play for like months at a time. Even though I couldn't play any of the leads or harmonies or anything like that, definitely helped the rhythm stuff a lot. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that record's got some fast picking going on.
Goddamn right it does. Okay, so the last thing I want to kind of touch on here, obviously you had a new record just come out in April, but unfortunately, as everybody knows, we are in the middle of a pandemic, so it kind of threw a wrench into your guys' release and touring plans. So how have you guys kind of been coping with that and trying to figure out where things go from here?
We're kind of like a lot of people. We're just kind of in a wait and see mode. I know our summer tour that was supposed to start next month, obviously everyone's, there's been a post that it's been postponed, which is probably going to not happen until next summer.
Yeah.
And then we have some touring, the second leg of the tour in the fall. Everyone's hoping that, that'll be the first leg of the tour, but, it's like everything's getting pushed further and further back. Because just, the nature of the virus, and you can't really put on a metal concert in social distance because
it doesn't sound very fun.
It's just like a lot of things. Like, if we have to limit the amount of people that can gather together, it's like you can't. It costs a lot of money to tour, and it's like if there's not as max amount of people that you can get in a venue to generate income from ticket sales and all that stuff, it's like. Bands aren't going to want to tour and like lose money. It's already, people are losing money anyway as it is with not touring. So it's like going on tour and having even more expenses and not as much money coming in kind of puts a wrench in that. But, I feel more bad for the bands that really were, the smaller bands that are up and coming that really need to tour, to sell records, sell merch, to be able to survive that, can't play any shows right now. That's, it got to be really, really hard on people. But for now, like, when I'm not on tour, I basically just stay home anyway. I don't really go out anywhere. So I really haven't, really hasn't affected me too much in that regard. But,
yeah, I feel you there.
But, Matt's been doing his Twitch thing for a couple of years. So that's definitely been good with, engaging with fans. Around the time of the release, we were doing a bunch of like Zoom chats and conference call stuff that fans could engage in. We did kind of like a round table talking about the making of the record with our record producer, Josh Wilbur.
Mm-hmm.
We did some virtual in-store where the band just kind of like shot the shit in a group chat while we signed copies of the record that people ordered. So just trying to do, as much stuff we can to just kind of engage with fans and give them content because, a lot of people being, stuck at home, there's nothing to go out, go see a concert or go do anything. People just like want entertainment and something to pass the time. So, we try to do, as much stuff that people can engage with the band. Basically now everyone but me is on Twitch, like live streaming every day. Paulo and Alex, been doing, Alex has been doing it for a little bit longer. Paulo just got on it. He's been doing like kind of bass stuff, jamming along, playing stuff, whatever, kind of the same thing. Like, Matt does a thing where he's just doing like karaoke or jamming Trivium songs, doing like special sets. And then obviously everyone, on Twitch, you gotta, can't be on Twitch without fucking doing some gaming. So everyone's, kind of been doing a bunch of Call of Duty stuff. I know Paulo and Alex are doing some charity fundraiser this weekend, doing some like Call of Duty thing with like, I think some of the dudes from like Fit for an Autopsy and In Flames and stuff to try to raise money for like all the crew people that, are out of work for, for the foreseeable future. So, everyone's just, I think a lot of, not just us, but there's a lot of, as you can see on, like social media and like news sites, a lot of musicians, that can't tour and everything are doing like either Zoom jams or collaborating with other artists to, entertain people or, perform on social media, over the internet, kind of at least be able to like do some kind of entertainment, because everyone, all the musicians are entertainers. It's kind of like, what everyone does. So just have to do it a different way. And we're going to be doing a special thing coming up in a few months. That's going to be pretty big. So be a good fun thing. People have been, they've been wanting to see a Trivium live show. This is going to be the best thing possible for the circumstances. So it's going to be, hopefully we'll have something announced in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's good to see the scene come together this way and making do with what we got, and people still wanting to support that. It's it could have been a complete clusterfuck. People being like, oh, I don't want to stream this, but if it's all we got, like, man, it's awesome that everybody's engaging and wanting to be a part of that. So it's cool that you guys are going to do something like that too.
Yeah, we were planning on doing something around like we're going to do like some big live stream concert when the record came out. Mm-hmm. Since the tour was going to be like a couple months after the record came out, we were going to do like a CD release kind of show, and then everything kind of hit the fan fucking a few weeks, or like a month or so before that. And plus we have half the band that doesn't live in the same state, so it was like we couldn't fly anybody in or fly our crew in. So we had to kind of put that on hold, and then now that the tour is not happening in the summer, we're gonna kind of like, this will be like our replacement for the tour not happening. So we're just kind of waiting for everything to kind of like ease up and be able to get together safely. Since a bunch of people have to fly in, we want to make sure we don't put anyone at risk. So we're just kind of being patient and doing what we can, to entertain people at home and entertain ourselves. We've been started working on new music for what will eventually be the next record. So
yeah, might as well.
At least I guess the quarantine kind of knowing touring, there will probably be a lot of new records coming out next year with bands, not have anything to do but write. So there's probably going to be a big surge of bands dropping new stuff sooner than you were expecting. So at least that'll be come out of the end of it with hopefully a lot of inspired killer music to enjoy, and hopefully get to go out and see in person.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting when that all drops, because bands aren't gonna they aren't gonna be touring for at least a year, so now they're gonna have maybe one or two records under their belt, and people are gonna get just like this excess of music, and it's gonna be interesting to see how bands do that for live sets.
Yeah, if we don't get to tour till next year, be like, man, the record's like a year old by the time we play our first show.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
So we'll just kind of play it by ear, but it's always good to always keep writing. It's like a working out a muscle. Just kind of keep it strong and just gather. Never hurts to have a stockpile of cool ideas at your disposal whenever you can get together to get together with the boys and start jamming some stuff. So good way to occupy your time if you get bored.
So one last little thing here. I don't know if you know about this or aware of this. Have you seen the movie Deathgasm?
I know about it. We met the dude who made it.
Okay. So Ascendancy, the cover of it is in that movie. But the weird thing is, it's a vinyl record, but this movie came out in like 2014 and 2015, but Ascendancy didn't actually get pressed on vinyl until 2018. So I was curious if you guys knew anything about that or how that got in there, because I always thought that was hilarious. That like, wait, how does he have a vinyl record of that? It doesn't even exist. I just thought it was so crazy that it was even in there.
It might have it might not have been a widely distributed thing, because there is even I've actually seen it. There's actually a Ascendancy cassette tape that was released. I think it was just depending on where in the world you lived, because I was at the Roadrunner office in like the Netherlands when they used to have it, like the main headquarters back in the, like years ago, and I was like, saw on the wall, I was like, a fucking Ascendancy cassette tape? And they're like, yeah, it was released in like the Philippines. They're still, or something like that. Like there's somewhere in Asia where they're said like, yeah, cassettes are still a big seller. So they make like limited amounts for certain regions. So
Interesting.
there might've been like some other independent, someone that like cut a deal or something to do like a limited edition or limited run of Ascendancy. Cause, I know there were some places like even before we did like a mass Crusade vinyl, there was like some place in Europe or something, I think did like a special limited run of like Crusade vinyls or something like that. Cause we'd be like, hey, I don't even have one of these. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just like a special limited edition thing or whatever. But, we met we toured not the last time, but, last time we did a headlining tour, it was probably like for Silence in the Snow or something.
Mm-hmm.
We played in Australia. And I guess he flew over from New Zealand, and we met him, and big Trivium fan. And he actually wanted to get our music in the movie, but for some reason at the time, someone at the label, like I guess he talked to the wrong person who wasn't really the one in charge of that.
Oh man.
And they didn't give him permission to use the songs. We're like, man, if he asked us, we would have been fucked. It's like, you know, I guess he asked like an intern or something that had absolutely no say in that kind of thing. So we're like, I guess he was at that time, he said he was in the process of he was going to make Deathgasm 2. So we were like, make sure you hit us up and we'll get you in touch with the right people if you want to get the music in the movie and stuff like that. So that was really cool because I think that's, I guess, one of the only movie that, you know, we show up in besides our music has been in some other stuff. But I know there was a Ascendancy poster in The Sopranos.
Yeah,
one
I
episode.
seeing that.
And then our other claim to fame is Ben Affleck getting shot in Smoking Aces with our song playing in a car.
Oh man, that's cool. Well, Corey, man, dude, I seriously can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with me about that record and, you know, how you guys are all doing now. And it was fun getting to kind of reminisce with you about that. So I really appreciate it, man.
No problem, man. Good chatting.
Yeah.
Be excellent to each other and